Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today. I'm just going to take some time here just to wait for people to filter in. We're also live on Facebook, so I'm just going to maybe give, I think, Marc, Teodora, maybe like 30 seconds to a minute just to have everyone filter in before we start.
Perfect. Welcome. All right, sounds good.
Yep, slowly we have.
Looking forward to today, Sandra, Teodora.
Yeah, slowly we have people filtering in on Facebook Live as well. I think I can see how many people are viewing it.
Awesome.
So I guess I'll wait till 2:01 and then I'll start, if that's okay.
Sure, yeah. Sounds good. Getting ready for the holidays, right?
Mm-hmm. Next week already. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start if that's okay, Marc and Teodora.
Sure, that's great.
Yep, I'll just do a brief introduction. Okay, so welcome everyone to our webinar session today. It's one of the last webinar sessions that we have before the end of the year. My name is Sandra, and I'm the marketing coordinator at TorontoJobs.ca. And right now you're joining the webinar that's titled Best Practices for Recruiting Staff in 2021. We have quite a few people on today and quite a few people registering or that have registered for the event, which shows that there's a lot of interest in hiring. I just wanted to say that Marc is going to start off the presentation for today. He's a CPA CA and he's the president of TorontoJobs.ca. And before I pass it on to him, I just wanted to mention that there will be a section a section of the event today where you'll be able to ask some questions. So there's a little box at the bottom of the Zoom screen. It's just named Q&A. You can pop your questions in there. And Marc and Teodora will do their best to answer all questions at the end. And I'll be back later on just to help moderate and facilitate the questions that come in. So Marc, if you're ready, I'll just pass it over to you.
For sure. Thanks, Sandra. Thanks for organizing and coordinating today's webinar. Really great job doing this each time. So really appreciate it. And welcome everybody. Part one, I'm going to do some introductions. I'll introduce myself a little bit more as well as Teodora. We're going to talk about the current labor market as well, just spending a few minutes on that. And then we're going to share, Teodora and I are going to share our best practices for recruiting and hiring. We have 10 tips that we thought we would share based on what we see, what we observe, and from feedback from our recruiting team as well. And then we'll conclude and take some questions and also tell you a little bit about what we do as well at TorontoJobs.ca. So first off, my background, I've been in recruiting for 26 years. I can't say that I've seen everything. There's always something new, but certainly the last year has definitely been the most interesting year of my recruiting career, last 20 months or so, I guess now. And I wanted to introduce as well Teodora, account executive, who's just going to say a few words as well here. So Teodora.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being on. And like Marc said, I'm the account executive at TorontoJobs.ca. So we'll be running through some of our thoughts and observation of the job landscape in Canada and the state of the labor market as it is right now. Marc and I are also going to be sharing some of our top 10 tips for best practices in recruiting staff in 2021. And the webinar should take only about half an hour. And like Sandra said, we will have some time at the end for a few questions. So just feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll get to as many as possible.
So I always like to start these presentations with a little bit of a snapshot as to what's going on in the labor market. And I'd say, looking back to where we were in March and April of 2020, where 3 million jobs in Canada were lost, over the last 18, 20 months or so, most of those jobs have come back. Now, maybe not so much at the same wages and maybe not hear Christia Freeland talking about the labor market in Canada. She mentioned it yesterday that 106% of the jobs that were lost have come back. Now, again, not quite the same, and they count a full-time job as a part-time job and a 3-day-a-week job as if it was a full-time job. So a little bit of differences and nuances, but certainly we're on the right track, and we have certainly recovered a lot faster than when we got hit with the credit crunch back in 2008 and 2009. That basically took about 8 or 9 years to recover most of the jobs. So just a quick snapshot, some of the highlights of the job numbers in Canada. Employment rose by 150,000 jobs in November and was effectively 186,000 jobs higher than where we were in February of 2020. Total hours worked also increased. Number of Canadians unemployed for 27 weeks or more fell by 60,000, and that was the first decline in long-term unemployment since August of 2021. Now, Canadians working from home was about 4.2 million, so about 20%, 22% of Canadians work from home. Across Canada, Quebec has the lowest unemployment rate at 4.5%, and Ontario's unemployment rate at 6.4%. And the province with the highest unemployment rate across Canada is Newfoundland and Labrador at just over 10%. And Newfoundland and Labrador has had the highest unemployment rate as a province for many, many months. Now, across this country, St. John, New Brunswick has the highest unemployment rate at 8.5%. 2.8% is the city with the lowest unemployment rate across Canada, which is Quebec City, Quebec, which is really amazing that it's under 3%. And Vancouver, 5.7%. And for most of you who are in the Greater Toronto area, Toronto is at 7.0%, and that was down from 7.9% in October. And quick snapshot of the U.S. The U.S. unemployment rate has also fallen. New pandemic low of 4.2%. They added 200,000 jobs, 210,000 jobs, which is a huge decline from last month. And interestingly, this is a stat that I look at quite a bit, is how many people are working from home. So in Canada, we're at about 20 or 22%. In the US, it's only 11.3%. So kind of interesting stats as to where we're at. And then Toronto had some good job creation in November. 43,000 jobs were added. The unemployment rate in Toronto is at 7%. So these are great numbers and really promising numbers. And in fact, this is where we're at in terms of the unemployment rate becoming getting lower as people find more jobs. It's more and more difficult to find candidates, and hence the demand for this webinar as well today. So I'll turn it over to Teodora to start our top 10 tips of best practices for recruiting and hiring for this year and then really into 2022.
Yeah, so getting right into it, for the top 10 tips for best practices for recruiting and hiring. Number one, we have learning to be more adaptable. So it's important for your company to be able to adapt during this health and economic crisis. Analyzing your current business model in the new year would be of benefit to you. So companies are now accommodating the employee more than ever in how work gets done by accommodating them through hours as well as compensation. So some important factors to consider when you're looking at compensation is that the candidate feels valued and that they're shown this through their compensation. So for example, you can offer more competitive pay rates, benefits, and even offering signing bonuses as incentives. For example, right now I have one client who has been, they've been seeking out a candidate for a sales rep. They need someone that is working that's willing to work 9 to 6. Currently, the market's very competitive. And so the candidate that I had to offer them is currently has a job that's 9 to 5. However, there is no incentive to move to a new job because the pay isn't very competitive. So if you want to remain competitive, another way to stay on top of the line in this market is just increasing compensation.
So welcome to our Facebook audience as well. And if you're watching here today on Zoom, I'm putting in the chat the top 10 tips as we go along. So number one, learning to be more adaptable, and that comes like Teodora said in all different aspects. Number two is being more open to remote work. I mean, there's no secret that people have become accustomed in many cases to be working from home. At the height of the pandemic, about 40% of Canadians across the country were working from home. As I mentioned earlier, about 20 to 22%. Now it is coming down for sure, but what would happen if your employees continued working full time from home after the pandemic? There's people that are working, companies that are asking their employees to come back full time. The city of Toronto just announced that they're pushing back bringing back people to the office to February instead of January. I received a text this morning from a friend of mine who wanted to share that as well. but really creating an in-depth concrete communication plan with remote workers moving forward. Keep in mind that obviously those that are applying to openings at your company and organization are probably asking more and more about remote working options. So you might want to add that to your job descriptions as well. Is this position working from home? Is it working in an office? Is it a hybrid? But it's amazing how companies have really gone from scrutinizing whether their employees should be allowed to work from home to a scenario where it's expected to be allowable. And right now we find that, while I said about 20 to 22% of people are working from home, right now we find it's about a third, meaning a third of people are working from home all the time. A third are having some kind of office hybrid, working from the office 2 days a week, at home 3 days a week. And then a third are working from an office or a warehouse all the time. So think of Amazon, where you can't really work from home, or frontline people that have to be in a location. So number two, just to summarize, is being more and more open to remote work and communicating that in your interviewing process.
Moving on to number 3, we have improving employee mental health and wellness. So this means providing more tools and resources for staff on how to improve their own mental health and well-being. This includes encouraging employees to take mental health days and helping members of your company communicate more about their concerns. So if you have any programs that are available in your company, make sure that's communicated to your employees and remind them that these programs are available. Perhaps you can even send out monthly notices reminding that these employees that these services would be available to them. And especially right now with the pandemic, it's been extremely prevalent for people to be feeling isolated and burnt out. So just checking in on one another, making sure that there's that dynamic with and company culture within the organization for people to reach out to one another. And like I always say, no one understands the stress and issues that go on at work as much as your coworkers and managers do. So just keeping in touch with your employees and making sure that they feel supported within their organization. So number 3, again, is improving employee mental health and wellness.
Yeah, and talking about that as well through the interview process, and sharing that in job descriptions and so on. So really letting people know, letting prospective employees know what you do for your employees. So number 4, creating better employee engagement. So I'm just putting them in the chat here as well. Creating better employee engagement. So how are you maintaining engagement among your staff, especially for those who live alone? Really important, but also when it comes to recruiting, to be sharing that. And we talked about all the different things that you can do, and that ranges from the hiring process, the attraction process, and the onboarding. But you want to share that with people as early as possible, because they're asking these kinds of questions. They want to know health and wellness. They want to know about engagement. Are they just going to be in working from home in their own office and that's it? Or is there going to be engagement? So scheduling casual Zoom meetings with your employees, encouraging staff to reach out to one another as a starting point, for example, having mentors and partners for employees to check in on each other. That's also helpful as well. And again, during the recruiting process, you want to talk about what programs are available. So again, number 4, creating better employee engagement.
And on to number 5, updating your company perks. So with employees working from home more and more, there's going to be a need for change in your company. So for example, what you can do is reviewing your company's benefit package to ensure that there's more mental health and wellness options for your staff who are feeling burnout. So including something like to go beyond the pandemic that would boost morale and positivity within the company is of benefit. For example, during the pandemic, companies have enhanced benefit packages. They're providing credits for employees to take over, to cover the costs for, desk chairs and office equipment, as well as reimbursement for internets. So it's important to keep in mind that you are paying into these company benefits and perks, and it's good to revise them every once in a while just to make sure that they are being used to their full extent and that your employees are getting the most out of it. So again, number 5, updating your company perks.
Great. We have about another 5-7 minutes left as we go through our top 10 tips. So number 6 is automating as much of your recruiting process as possible. Some companies have used the pandemic to really redevelop their entire recruiting process. For example, Amazon has taken the recruitment process for shift workers and have automated the whole process to the point that there's never actually an interview. The person shows up for their shift. Now, if you're a small to medium-sized business, you may not be able to automate it that much, but if you're a large business, this is really an opportunity to really look at your whole process and understand how that can be improved or automated. So take each step. Now, I like to share this story. Robot Vera, she's Russian. She can make thousands of calls a day. She can conduct 50,000 interviews a day. She can answer questions. She can work 24 hours a day, and so on and so forth. And she can also speak 68 languages, including Russian, Arabic, and English. So she's also being trained to recognize emotions like stress and sarcasm during interviews. So think about your entire interview process, including the onboarding, and think of what you can automate. Really, this is an opportunity now that we're post-COVID. Well, obviously during COVID, we're in the process of it right now, but this is a good time to really evaluate your whole process and see what can be changed, what can be improved on. So number 6, again, automate as much of your recruiting process as possible.
Number 7, we have looking at across Canada and around the world for employees. So working remotely right now may be a new thing, or it just may disappear eventually. But the reality is that it's here right now, and there's no indication on where we're going to go in the future. Since we can't confidently predict how the labor market will look like, what we can say right now is what we know for sure, and it's that working from home has become a very common thing. So with proximity being a less of an issue with workplace constraints, it's important to look beyond geographic constraints. So finding staff that are in less employed areas is definitely a benefit. So in looking in areas where there's high unemployment rates, you'll have more leverage in this way. And then you can also be looking at different government programs. There's lots available out there. There's hiring for student grants as well as training grants. So again, number 7, looking at across Canada and around the world for employees to accommodate working from home.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier to Teodora's point, I mentioned earlier that the city with the highest unemployment rate across Canada is St. John, New Brunswick at 8.5% across 33 metropolitan areas. So if you have the potential of hiring somebody and they can work remotely and they have the skills there, why don't you look to find candidates in those areas, in lower unemployment or higher unemployment rate areas? Number 8 is spelling out expectations for being available and not being available. So letting people know during the interview process what the expectations are for how many Zoom meetings there are, what their schedule may look like, and of course, try to cap it. We hear from a lot of job seekers that they get burnt out because they're in front of the computer all day through 8 hours without a lot of breaks. So, try to cap it, allow for breaks. And while this was an issue before COVID in terms of people looking for work-life balance, it's actually a different kind of work-life balance because they're still working from home, but you got to make sure that you don't have employees that are burning out, and has been what's happening. There's been talk of the Great Resignation. Haven't really seen that much in Canada. They talk about it more in the US, and you may have heard that, but we haven't really been seeing it that much. But candidates, job seekers are still definitely looking for that work-life balance. So number 8 is spelling out expectations for being available and not being available.
Perfect. And moving on to number 9, we have job seekers are more in tune with health and safety. So in this point, I just want to emphasize that job seekers are being more cautious when it comes to safety and health. So you want to ask yourself, do you have the necessary precautions in place? Do you have the safeguards and sanitizing stations in place, or plexiglass between employees and other customers? These are all important questions that candidates are going to want to know answers to, especially just with the pandemic, but even going beyond that when we're moving into people going back to work. And you also want to consider if you're providing sick days. So this is especially hot right now. It's a huge issue when people are afraid to call in sick because they might lose their job, or they're afraid that they won't get paid if they call in sick. And some employers are even requesting negative proofs of negative COVID tests before returning back to work, or requiring that you take 2 to 3 minimum days off before returning back to work from calling in sick once. So it's important that these health and safety standards are communicated to your employees and to candidates when applying for jobs, just so that there's first of all, no miscommunication in the process, and second of all, so that this is understood and that there's no hesitancy when it comes to taking days off for sick days, which are of course essential for everyone.
Number 10 is, this is probably my favorite actually, is making everything more visual. We live in we've been moving to a society where everything is visual. You got TikTok, you got social media, you got YouTube, but yet the job descriptions have still stayed in a funk, in the sense of a lot of words. People have to read text. And so making things more visual, more appealing. So taking job descriptions and maybe creating a video of it. People are more likely to click and watch a 30-second video than they are likely to read a 2-page job description. So using videos, having the line manager talk about what it's like to work in the team and in the department. If you have a HR or recruiting person, they can talk about the company, and maybe that can be uploaded to your channel, your YouTube channel, for example, if you have one. But using LinkedIn, using Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, obviously depends on what type of jobs you're looking to fill. If you're looking for a CFO role, you might not post on Snapchat, but think of where your targeted audience is looking, and having a social media strategy to complement your search. Connect with your marketing people to see how you can use this organization's social media to advertise about open positions. So what happens, I find, is the marketing people are over here really creating some great content and so on. But then you have recruiting people over here who are dying to get employees, and they're not talking to each other and they're not leveraging each other. So number 10, making everything more visual.
And we did include a bonus tip. So bonus number 11, we have training our line managers and interviewing to do interviews virtually. So it's one thing to have your line managers interview with you in a room or have them close by, but it's another thing when you don't know how to interview candidates by video. So in this case, the best thing to do is to practice with your line managers and give them direction. I've seen a lot of poor interviews being done by managers right now, and it's especially detrimental in the market that we're in, because good candidates are already very difficult to find and recruit, yet a poorly conducted interview will only drive them away even more. So to avoid this, some usual tips for video interviews that you could follow yourself are having good lighting, as well as no kids screaming in the background or any other background noise, making sure that your camera is at an appropriate angle, and always the most important is making sure that you're on time and very prompt for the interview.
So practice, right?
Exactly. So yeah, that was number 11. And like I said, there have been many changes. And as Marc was discussing, the very many changes within our recruitment landscape right now. And because of this changes, it's important that we don't underestimate onboarding candidates. So even once a candidate has signed the offer, it's important that you stay in touch with them and that you get them excited about actually starting the position and create that culture before they even come in, so that it's already embedded for when they start. And there are many more tips that Marc and I can share with you. So feel free to reach out to us at any time. We will drop our contact information in the chat box below. Yeah, feel free to reach out anytime.
Terrific. So I know there's some questions that are coming in. I think Sandra will be popping back in here as well, and then we'll talk. So we'll take over some questions, and then we'll talk a little bit about how we can help organizations as well. Right, Sandra?
Yes. Okay. So let me start off here. So the first question that we have here is, what are organizations doing regarding having people back to work?
So as I mentioned, it's about a third. So a third working from home full-time, a third hybrid model, and then a third working from an office full-time. It's a tough one in terms of having people back to work, because you don't know what's right or wrong. I mean, I've walked into companies that have set up plastic shields between the employees. They're all set. They have everybody's vaccinated, and they haven't had any outbreaks. And then I know of an organization that had an outbreak, 2 outbreaks in the last couple of weeks. So it's really tough. It really depends on your industry, the needs, how much personal connection is needed. Really talking to your employees, surveying people, because I'll tell you one thing that I've noticed is that we get candidates coming to us and saying, my employer has asked me to come back and I don't want to. I want to work from home. I've been able to do it for the last 20 months. So unless a new job has the opportunity to work from home all the time, I'm not really interested. So you might want to survey employees to see what they want and what they think is best. There's no really one size fits all. Some departments may require people in person, such as customer service and warehouse, while others might be able to work from home, like accounting, HR, and so on. So survey and speak openly with your employees about what makes sense for their roles.
Okay, we have one question here that's, where did it go? Yes, so someone's asking if we're going to be sending the recording. So I will be downloading the recording and then putting it onto our YouTube channel. Mark, if that's good.
Sorry, I didn't catch the first part.
It was just someone was just asking about the recording of the webinar. So I was going to download it and it'll be up on our YouTube channel. Yeah, so we have another question here is, what strategies will you recommend when looking for employees in small remote places to work? For example, Meaford, Ontario.
Right. So maybe I'll take that one, Teodora. So I would, I would really look at remote working options. So I would look for people that might work or might be able, if the job can be done remotely, then spread your wings out to far and wide across Canada or even around the world. Maybe somebody can do this in the States. But if you are looking for employees that have to work in that location, one of the strategies that I've done over the years is I look for, I search resume databases and I search for the keyword, say Meaford, in this case, Meaford, Ontario. Look for people that used to live there. Maybe they grew up there. Maybe they went to public school there, high school, and find people. Sometimes they want to come back to where they were before. If there's one thing through COVID that I've learned is that everybody can move around a lot quicker than before. I mean, we've had somebody in our office move from Brantford to Paris, Mississauga to London, right? We've seen a lot of changes, and really remote working has allowed that flexibility for sure.
So the other question that we have here, I believe it's from Anna. How can more value be shown by nonprofits where funding is limited?
You want to try that one, Teodora?
Yeah, so I was just going to say, I am working with a couple of nonprofits right now, and I do have clients expressing the same concerns in terms of funding that is limited. And all I can say is that you have to understand that whatever services you're paying for is probably what you're going to get in terms of outcome. So it's worth putting into your budget and allocating for, a little more expensive services that will constantly feed your pipeline, and you'll have a funnel of candidates running through. Than it is to, use a job board posting every month. Instead, I would recommend allocating the money that you would put towards a job board posting every month into one bulk and doing it either a social media campaign where it's a more broad of audience and allocating it that way. So it's just a matter of allocating the funds towards different services. I know right now job board postings are very common, but that's the problem. There's many employees that aren't many job seekers that aren't very patient with looking through the postings, and they would prefer to just come to a webinar or have a one-on-one conversation with someone or have someone directly reach out to them. So just looking into other streams would be my recommendation.
Yeah, and I would just add to that also that, there's an intrinsic value of somebody working for a not-for-profit. So really leveraging that, maybe there's a hook in a certain area, a type of people that may want to work for your particular not-for-profit. And also from a budgetary perspective, maybe thinking about 3 days a week, dropping it down to 3 days a week or 4 days a week, where somebody might be like, yeah, you know what, I'd love to work 3 days a week for a not-for-profit. Instead of full-time. Maybe that can help with limited funding scenarios.
Do we have some time for more questions? I know it's almost 2:30, so
maybe one more question.
One more?
Sandra? Yeah, is that all right?
Okay, so another question is, how does automation help in assessing a candidate's personality fit to the role, team, and company culture?
Well, these are great questions.
Mhm.
I'll take that one because I addressed that one earlier on with automation or through the automation tip. But yeah, I mean, automation is just there to improve the process, improve the flow to get candidates to you. That could be screening, that could be pre-screening, pre-interviews, and so on. I give the example of Robot Vera. It's not necessarily going to make the match any better. It may improve the process, speed things up. And I think just end with this one quick comment, and that is that candidates are also looking at how your process is. So if it's old school, if it's perceived that it's not as advanced, they may be turned off by that. They might think that your slow process they may project that to the rest of your company or your organization that it's slow. So even if you take little pieces and automate it, whatever that may be, sending out scheduled Zoom messages and so on, that can be helpful for you for illustrating that your organization is a little bit ahead of the curve and that you're forward thinking and trying to get things done a lot faster. Hopefully that makes sense.
Okay. So I guess if the two of you perhaps could put your contact information in the chat, just because there were a couple more questions. So if anyone has any more questions or follow-up questions, you could reach out to Marc or Teodora and they can answer them for you.
Sure, I'm doing that right now. And feel free to email me or call me. Teodora, I know you're going to talk about the services as well that we can help people with.
Absolutely. I just wanted to touch a little bit on our recruitment services. So please feel free to reach out to me. I dropped my contact information below as well. We do temporary as well as full-time and contract recruitment. Our recruitment team would be responsible for the entire process from sourcing candidates, conducting interviews, background checks, and then presenting them to our clients. So if you'd like more information on our recruitment services, again, please feel free to contact me and it is in the chat below.
Sounds great. And I just wanted to share with you also our social media links as well, that you can follow us. You can join. We have a TorontoJobs.ca social media, and we also have Toronto Recruiters social media. So feel free to join. We post a lot of content on there about tips for interviewing, when you're interviewing, when you're hiring. And I also wanted to mention a great new platform that we've been working on for the last year or so. We've launched a new hiring platform where you can interview candidates directly on the site. Please check it out. It's called Guhuza.com. It's GUHUZA.com. I'm going to post it in the chat here, but G like Gordon, UHUZA.com. We've been working on it, like I said, for most of the last year. And it's got some cool features on there. You can test candidates directly through the platform. You can also do background checks as well. So I think you'll find it great. It's free to use. You can use it to interview candidates, find candidates, and we save you a lot of time in the process as well. So that's it for now. I want to say thanks to Teodora and Sandra for today, and thank everybody for being on today's webinar. Again, feel free to reach out to Teodora or myself if there's anything you'd like to ask, want to talk about your staffing needs, if there's anything we can help you with. And have a great day and best wishes for the holidays and for 2022 as well.
Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.
Thanks.
Bye.